My name is Emily, and I never thought my life would take such an abrupt turn. One moment, everything was normal. The world around me moved in the usual rhythm, predictable and safe. The sound of the coffee machine humming in the kitchen, the soft tapping of my fingers against my laptop as I answered emails, the distant murmur of the television playing a morning news segment. Just another ordinary day in an ordinary life. Outside, the streets of Boston stretched beneath a sky painted in dull gray, the kind that hinted at rain but never quite delivered. I had a long weekend ahead, plans with friends, errands to run. Nothing unusual. Life was stable, routine, a path I walked without ever considering that, in an instant, everything could be rewritten. The first sign that something was wrong came suddenly. A dull pressure at the back of my head. Subtle, almost ignorable, just another headache, I told myself. Maybe from staring at screens too long. Maybe I hadn't drunk enough water. I pushed it aside. But then it sharpened. A piercing, crushing weight inside my skull, like something inside me had ruptured. My breath caught, and my knees nearly buckled as the world around me tilted in a way that didn't make sense. My heart pounded, erratic and violent, as if it were fighting to keep up with something unseen. I reached for the edge of the counter to steady myself, but my hands no longer felt like my own. My fingers trembled, barely responding to the commands I gave them. My vision blurred, edges fading into an unnatural darkness, a creeping void that swallowed the familiar shapes of my apartment. I tried to move, tried to speak, but my body, my own body, was betraying me. A wave of nausea rolled over me, cold and relentless, and before I could comprehend what was happening, the world around me began to slip away. I was falling. Then nothing. Silence. An unnatural weightlessness surrounded me, as if I had been pulled from the very fabric of reality. I expected to feel the hard floor beneath me, the pain of the fall, the disorienting thud of impact. But there was nothing. No sensation at all. And then I saw myself. At first, my mind refused to make sense of it. My body, lying motionless on the ground, my arms sprawled at odd angles, my face eerily still. My chest, was it moving? Was I breathing? Panic should have seized me. Fear should have sent me screaming. But instead, a strange calmness wrapped around me, unnatural and foreign, like a force greater than my own understanding was holding me steady. I tried to move toward my body, to touch it, to shake myself awake, but I couldn't. My hands, if I even had hands, passed through the air as if I were nothing but a whisper of existence. And then a pull. A force, gentle at first, then growing stronger, pulling me away from the scene before me. I tried to fight it. I wasn't ready for this. But it didn't matter, because something was waiting for me on the other side. Before we continue, I have something special for you. If you're here, it's because you feel something stirring inside you. Maybe you've had moments in your life where you felt a presence, something beyond what you can explain. I want to know who you are. I want to send a special message to you in our next video. Comment your name and your city below. Yes, you. Let the world hear your name. Let thousands of people see it in the next video. It's your moment to shine. A small moment of recognition. A connection between us and this incredible community. And if you believe in messages that change lives, if you feel drawn to stories like this, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This is more than just a video. This is a place where we come together, where we lift each other up, and where you are part of something bigger. Now, let's continue. Something awaits on the other side. The pull was relentless. I wasn't walking. I wasn't flying. I wasn't moving in any way my human mind could understand. And yet, I was being drawn forward, away from the apartment, away from the life I had known, deeper into something unknown. At first, there was only darkness. Not the kind you experience when you close your eyes, where faint traces of light still dance behind your eyelids. No. This was complete, infinite. A void so deep that it felt like it had never known light. And then, far ahead, something began to change. A glow. Soft at first, like the flickering of a candle in the distance. Then brighter, spreading, growing, shifting, until it became a tunnel of radiant golden light. But it wasn't just light. It was alive. It pulsed. It beckoned.
And it knew me.
A presence surrounded me, warm and overwhelming, like an embrace from something far greater than anything I had ever known. It filled every part of me, my thoughts, my emotions, even the spaces within me I never realized had been empty. This wasn't just light. This was love. Unfiltered, limitless. A deep peace settled into me, dissolving every trace of fear, every ounce of doubt. I wasn't afraid anymore. I couldn't be afraid. Not in this presence. Then a shift. Somewhere beyond the light, I felt something else. A stirring, a sense of movement. And then I saw them. Figures. At first, they were distant, mere shapes within the brilliance, their forms barely distinguishable from the light itself. But as I moved closer, or as they moved toward me, I could see them more clearly. They weren't just figures. They were people. Hundreds, maybe thousands, standing in the radiance, their faces filled with something indescribable, joy, serenity, understanding. Some of them turned toward me, their eyes meeting mine, and in that instant I knew them. Not by name, not by memory, but in a way that went beyond recognition. I knew them, their souls, their essence, their stories, and I could feel that they knew me, too. I opened my mouth to speak, to ask where I was, what was happening. But before the words could leave my lips, a voice filled the space around me. A voice unlike anything I had ever heard. It wasn't loud, yet it carried more power than thunder. It wasn't soft, yet it wrapped around me like a whisper meant only for my ears. It didn't just speak. It resonated inside me. And it called my name, Emily. The moment I heard it, something deep inside me awakened. A memory, a truth. I had always known this voice. Even before this moment, before this experience, before this life. Somewhere in the depths of my soul, I had always known it. And then I saw him. A figure emerged from the brilliance, stepping forward with a presence so vast, so absolute, that I felt as though the very fabric of existence bowed to him. He didn't need an introduction. I knew who he was. And in that instant, every question, every doubt, every piece of uncertainty that had ever existed within me vanished. Because I was standing before Jesus. His eyes met mine. And the moment they did, I felt my soul lay itself bare before him. There was nothing I could hide. Nothing I wanted to hide. Because in his gaze, there was no condemnation. Only truth. Only love. Only the weight of something eternal. Then he spoke again. And his next words changed everything. His gaze held mine, steady and unwavering, as if he could see every thought forming inside me before I even had the chance to speak. But of course he could. I felt like a child before him, not because he made me feel small, but because in his presence, I was small. My existence, my struggles, my fears, my joys, my entire life felt like a single drop in an infinite ocean. And yet, I had never felt more seen, more known, more loved. The moment stretched beyond time itself. No clock was ticking, no world was spinning beyond this sacred space. There was only him and the unbearable weight of truth settling over me. You were not meant to die today. His voice wasn't loud, yet it vibrated through my very being, threading itself into every corner of my soul. The words carried more than just meaning, they carried purpose. I wasn't meant to die today. Then why was I here? As if answering my unspoken question, he lifted his hand, and the light around us shifted. The warm radiance softened, bending, folding, changing, and suddenly, I was somewhere else. At first, I wasn't sure where. The transition was seamless, like a dream shifting from one scene to another, yet it wasn't a dream. It was real. More real than anything I had ever known. I stood at the edge of a vast expanse, an endless horizon stretching before me. Neither sky nor land, but something that existed between the two. Then movement. Below me, Scenes began to unfold, like pages of a book being turned in rapid succession. And what I saw stole my breath away. I saw the world, but not as it had been, as it was becoming. At first, it seemed familiar: cities, streets, people moving through their daily routines, unaware of anything beyond their immediate lives. Laughter, conversations, traffic, the hum of existence continuing as it always had. But then, cracks began to form. Not physical cracks, spiritual ones. The atmosphere grew heavy. The colors dulled. I saw people smiling, yet their eyes were hollow. I saw families sitting together at dinner tables, yet they were separated by an invisible chasm, their hearts disconnected. I saw churches, once filled with songs and prayers, now reduced to empty buildings, where faith had been replaced with indifference. And then, the scenes changed again. Faster this time. I saw earthquakes, buildings trembling as deep fissures split the ground apart. I saw storms, winds howling with unnatural fury, waves swallowing entire cities. I saw violence, nations rising against nations, people turning against their own neighbors, a world tearing itself apart from the inside out. And yet, none of it was random. It wasn't chaos.
It was consequence.
A world that had drifted too far, pulled too deeply into its own pride, its own desires, its own refusal to see the truth that had been calling out to it for centuries. I turned back to Jesus, my heart pounding with something between sorrow and terror. "Why are you showing me this?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. His gaze didn't waver. "Because they do not see." I swallowed hard. My chest tightened with a weight I could barely hold. He was right. The world was blind, willfully blind, and time was running out. I opened my mouth to speak again, but before I could form the words, the vision shifted once more. And this time, what I saw would haunt me forever. The vision shifted. The world I had just seen, fractured, unraveling, began to dissolve before my eyes, replaced by something new. At first, I saw nothing but light. Not the golden radiance from before, but a purer, more refined glow, like the very essence of peace woven into the fabric of existence. It wasn't blinding, but it filled everything. It carried warmth, assurance, something deeply familiar, as if every fiber of my being had been longing for this place without even knowing it. Then out of the brilliance, scenes began to form. Not of destruction, not of fear, but of hope. I saw people praying, not out of desperation, but out of faith. Hearts turning back, hands lifting toward the heavens in surrender. Families once divided, now reunited. Love being restored where hatred had once taken root. The world I had just seen in chaos was also capable of healing. And then, amidst the light, I saw Donald Trump. His face was familiar. Someone the world knew. Someone constantly surrounded by controversy, by voices speaking for and against him. Yet, in this vision, all of that faded away. What I saw wasn't a politician. I saw Donald Trump. A person. A soul. And around him, there was peace. A peace that the world could not give, nor could it take away. I saw health returning to him, strength rebuilding where weariness had settled. I saw his family gathered, not in turmoil, but in harmony, in joy, in something so rare for those who live in the constant spotlight of the world. I saw his friends, his closest ones, their faces marked not by concern, but by hope. A time of restoration was upon him. A season where the weight that had once been unbearable was now being lifted. And above all, I saw that he was not alone. A presence surrounded him, a divine protection, unseen by the world, but undeniably real. No matter what came, no matter what trials arose, he would not stand without guidance. He was being held. I turned back to Jesus, my heart still trembling from the weight of everything I had seen before. Yet now, there was something new within me, something stronger than fear.
Hope.
He nodded, as if he had been waiting for me to understand. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, the vision faded. The world around me dissolved into a brilliance beyond anything I could comprehend. The air itself hummed with something ancient and eternal, a presence greater than words. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning. Before we continue, I want to do something special for you. We are building something incredible here, a place where stories like this bring us together, where faith and truth light the way. And I want you to be a part of it. Comment below your name and the city you're watching from. Let the world see you. Let your name be spoken in our next video. Imagine this, thousands of people hearing your name, sending blessings your way. It's your moment to shine, and we want to celebrate you. And if you believe in messages that change lives, if you feel something moving inside you right now, leave a like on this video. Show the world that you are here, that you are awake, that you are part of something bigger than yourself. Now, let's continue. Because what I saw next changed everything. The brilliance that had surrounded me pulsed, shifting like waves of living energy. The vision of hope and renewal faded, yet its warmth lingered, etched into the depths of my being. But I knew the journey wasn't over. Something else was coming. Jesus stood before me, his gaze filled with both sorrow and urgency. And then, without a word, the world around us changed again. Suddenly, I was standing on the edge of a vast horizon. It wasn't heaven, but it wasn't earth either. It was something in between, a space where the past, present, and future seemed to merge into one. And before me, like a vision unfolding in time, I saw what was coming. At first, it seemed peaceful. I saw the world continuing as it always had. Cities pulsed with life. People moved through their days, unaware of the invisible forces shaping their destiny. There was laughter, business meetings, vacations being planned. But beneath the surface, something was different. A stirring, an unseen shift. It was like standing on a quiet shore, watching the tide pull back, knowing a storm was building beyond the horizon. And then the first wave hit. I saw nations trembling, not from war or invasion, but from something deeper, a reckoning. Economic structures that had stood for decades wavered. Leaders, once confident, now uncertain, their hands trembling as they tried to hold together something that was already breaking. I saw families struggling, not just financially, but spiritually. The world had changed, and they didn't know how to navigate it anymore. The things they once trusted, institutions, systems, routines, were no longer enough. Fear spread like wildfire, but it wasn't just fear of the unknown. It was the fear of realization. The fear that the world wasn't in control anymore. And then, as if the veil had been lifted, I saw what was truly at play. It wasn't just political. It wasn't just economic. It was spiritual. Beneath the chaos, beneath the news headlines and the speeches, something darker was moving. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting for centuries. I saw forces at work, not in shadows, but in plain sight, yet the world was too distracted to notice. I saw the whispers in high places, decisions made behind closed doors, agreements forged in secrecy that would shape the destiny of nations. And worst of all, I saw people surrendering to it, not because they wanted to, but because they no longer knew the difference between truth and deception. Because the lines had been blurred. What was once unthinkable had become acceptable. What was once sacred had become mocked. What was once evil was now called good. And those who dared to speak out, they were silenced. I turned to Jesus, my soul trembling. This is unstoppable, isn't it? For the first time, a shadow of sorrow crossed his face. But there was no fear in his eyes. Only certainty. The battle has always been here, he said. But now, the time has come when they must choose. His words echoed, resonating through the very fabric of my being. It wasn't just about governments.
It wasn't just about disasters.
It was about souls. It had always been. And then he lifted his hand. The vision shifted once more. And what I saw next would change me forever. The world around me shifted again. The weight of Jesus' words still pressed against my soul, but before I could process them, the vision deepened. It was as if time itself was folding, revealing what had always been there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be seen. And then I saw it. A moment in time, not far from now. A moment that would shake the earth. At first it was subtle, a whisper moving through the world, like a passing breeze. Something people felt but couldn't explain. A stirring in their hearts, a deep, unshakable knowing that something had shifted. And then, the veil was lifted. It happened so quickly. The news flashed across screens. Voices trembled as they tried to explain what could not be explained. I saw confusion gripping the world, people struggling to make sense of what had just begun. Because what was happening was not man-made. It was divine. And suddenly, the distractions of everyday life no longer mattered. The things that once consumed people, their careers, their ambitions, their divisions, were meaningless now. Because truth was standing at their doorstep. I turned to Jesus, my chest tight with the weight of what I had seen. This is it, isn't it? I whispered. His expression didn't change. He didn't need to answer. I already knew. This was the moment the world had been racing toward. Some would recognize it. Some would deny it. But no one would be able to ignore it. A final call. A last chance. And as the world stood on the edge, the choice was being placed before them.
Come back.
Or be lost forever. I felt my soul tremble. And then, before I could breathe, before I could fully absorb what was happening, I was being pulled back. The brilliance of the vision blurred, the world tilted, and suddenly, I was no longer standing beside Jesus. I was falling, rushing back toward my body, toward the life I had left behind. And in the distance, I heard his final words. Tell them. Before we continue, I need to share something with you. This is more than just a story. This is a message meant to reach those who feel that stirring inside them. Maybe you've felt it too. Maybe you've known deep down that the world is shifting, that something bigger is happening. This is why we do this. Not for money, not for recognition, just for the truth. But to keep bringing these messages, we need you. If this message spoke to you, if you believe more people need to hear it, please take a moment to support this community. Like this video, it helps us reach more people. Subscribe, because we are building something bigger than ourselves. We don't earn anything from this. We do it because we believe in it. And your support, your simple click on a like or subscribe button, means more than you know. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this. And now, let's finish this. Because the final revelation is about to begin. I gasped. Air flooded my lungs, burning as if I had been holding my breath for eternity. My chest ached, a deep, pulsing pain that made me feel like I had been shattered from the inside out. I could hear again. Distant voices, muffled and urgent. Machines beeping in frantic rhythms. The rustling of movement around me. I was back. My vision was blurry, but as I blinked, the shapes sharpened. I saw white walls. Harsh fluorescent lights. People standing over me, their faces stunned. A hospital. The weight of my body pressed into the bed, unfamiliar and heavy, like I had been away from it for far too long. My fingers twitched, slow and weak, as if they were rediscovering how to move. I heard a sharp gasp. Then, my mother's voice. Emily. Her whisper was barely audible, filled with shock and disbelief. I turned my head, my muscles straining. And there she was, tears spilling down her cheeks, hands trembling as she reached toward me, afraid to touch me, as if she thought I would disappear again. A doctor stepped closer, shining a small light into my pupils. I flinched, my body still struggling to process sensation. This is impossible, I heard one of them say. I knew why. Because I had died. My heart had stopped. My body had already begun shutting down. The doctors had called it. My family had prepared for the worst. And yet here I was, alive. But I wasn't the same, because I had seen what awaited on the other side. And now I had a mission. Over the next few days, I learned everything that had happened. The paramedics had worked desperately to revive me, but I hadn't responded. By the time I arrived at the hospital, there was nothing more they could do. They had already begun preparing my family for the inevitable. Then, without warning, my heart started beating again. The machines, which had been flatlined, suddenly jumped back to life. The doctors called it a medical anomaly, a miracle, but I knew what it was, because I had been sent back, not for myself, but to warn them.
To warn you.
At first, I thought people would listen. How could they not? I had been dead. The doctors themselves couldn't explain it. It should have been undeniable proof. But I quickly realized the truth is not always easy to hear. Some people laughed. You were hallucinating. It was just your brain shutting down. You're imagining things. Others dismissed me before I could even finish speaking. The world isn't ending. You're just another religious nut trying to scare people. I heard it all. The skepticism, the jokes, the excuses. But then there were the others. The ones who pulled me aside, eyes wide, whispering, "Tell me more." The ones who had already felt something stirring inside them but had been too afraid to acknowledge it. The ones who had been searching for answers, feeling that something was coming but not knowing what. They weren't the loudest voices. They weren't the ones arguing online or debating theology. But they were listening, and I knew that was all that mattered. I wish I could say that what I saw was far away, something that might happen decades from now. But that's not the truth. March was only the beginning. I don't know every detail. Jesus didn't give me a date and time for every event. But I saw enough to know that we are on the edge of something massive. The world is shifting. The deception is growing. And time is running out. This isn't about politics. This isn't about governments. This isn't about which side you're on. This is about souls. The battle is not against nations or leaders. It's spiritual. And if we don't turn back to Jesus now, what comes next will be worse.
I know that sounds terrifying.
But Jesus didn't send me back to scare you. He sent me back to give you hope. Because if you're watching this, it's not by accident. Maybe you've felt it too, that deep, unshakable feeling that something is off. That the world is spiraling towards something bigger than what we see on the news. Maybe you've been ignoring it. Maybe you've told yourself that things will get better. That the world has always been crazy, and this is just another rough patch. Or maybe, deep down, you already know the truth. Jesus is real. He is coming soon. And we need to turn back before it's too late. This is not the time to be lukewarm. This is not the time to sit back and wait for things to fix themselves. The door is closing, but it's not closed yet. There is still hope. There is still time. There is still a chance to repent, to seek Jesus with your whole heart. And there is still time to share this message with those you love.
I don't know who needed to hear this today,
but I know that someone did. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone you know. But please don't ignore this. If you feel something stirring inside you, that is Jesus calling you. He loves you more than you could ever imagine. He is waiting for you, but he won't wait forever. This is important. I need you to do one last thing before you go. There is another video waiting for you. A message that will be revealing in your life. A message you can't miss. Click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.
Don't wait. Go now.
And before you leave a like on this video. And in the comments, type Amen. Because when you do, you are declaring your faith. And you will continue to be blessed. This is only the beginning. But you are not alone.
And the next step?
It's waiting for you right now.